Well, good afternoon and welcome to all of you. Feel free, as I mentioned before, to get up and get a cup of coffee, cookies, or lunch. We're just so happy to be back here again to announce our annual theme for the March for Life. For those of you I haven't had a chance to meet in person, I'm Jeanne Mancini. I'm honored to be president of the March for Life. And as we begin this morning, I'd like to just say a very big thank you to a few people. First of all, our March for Life staff. We have the most amazing team ever at the March for Life. It's such a blessing to work there. So thank you, because they all worked very hard to make today a possibility. And then also Representative Ann Wagner, who arranged to have the room here, and unfortunately she can't be here with us today, but she'll be speaking at the March for Life, and we are very grateful for her help in coordinating some of these details today. So, and welcome, as I said, to each of you. We've been doing this now, let's see, I've been at the March for Life for 7 years. I think this is our 6th theme briefing, and it's just so exciting to begin the season of the March for Life. So each year presents a different urgent and important challenge, I would say, or a number of challenges in this great battle for our times, the battle against abortion, the fight to end abortion. And of course, this year is no exception as we enter into 2020. The present moment is marked by a profound confusion about what it means to be pro-woman. The abortion industry, mainstream media, and so many political figures of our day are not only advocating, but even celebrating abortion. Perhaps some of you have heard of the campaign, Shout Your Abortion. We've come a long way from safe, legal, and rare to shout your abortion. Ending the life of an innocent human being is being promoted as an essential to women's freedom, to women's empowerment, and to women's progress. To that, we say, no. We know this message about women and abortion is both deceptive and hurtful. We also know the sad truth about the relationship between women and abortion. Mother Teresa said it best: abortion is profoundly anti-women. 3/4 of its victims are women, half the babies, and all of the mothers. In the midst of this great challenge surrounding the confusion and messaging about women and abortion, the March for Life team has chosen a unique theme positioned to impact culture and to offer clarity and hope. Inspired by these pressing needs, our theme aims to change hearts and minds, to make abortion unthinkable in our culture. So without further ado, it is my great privilege to announce the official theme for the 2020 March for Life. Life empowers, pro-life is pro-woman. So our theme is Life empowers, pro-life is pro-woman. In the year ahead, we celebrate the centennial of the 19th Amendment, which created a woman's right to vote in the United States. On this 100th anniversary of this amendment, we remember and honor the true suffragists, those original, courageous female leaders who recognized both the inherent dignity of women and the inherent dignity of the unborn. These great women knew that these two creatures, mother and baby, were not at odds with each other. It has been said politically and culturally that for one to be pro-woman, one must be pro-choice. Nothing could be further from the truth. Sadly, however, a multitude of deceptive and confusing messages about women and abortion continue to be promoted. And yet the empowering truth, clear and unshakable, remains. Being pro-life is pro-woman. Science, research, and our own lived experience support this. Choosing life is empowering and ennobling. That's not to say that it won't be difficult in certain scenarios, but it is empowering and ennobling. Alice Paul, author of the original Equal Rights Amendment and suffragist, referred to abortion as the ultimate exploitation of women. The single greatest human rights violation of our day, abortion, takes the life of one and wounds the life of another. Women who courageously choose life not only make a life-saving decision, but also choose hope and healing. We recognize, as the suffragists did, that a woman's capacity to have a child is incredibly amazing. This beautiful capacity is inherent to who she is as a person, even if she's never biologically a mother. Far from being merely a liability, her ability to bring new life into the world is truly miraculous. And it's essential to it being a human being. It's an essential gift to all humanity and to society. Of course, a woman is not defined by her ability to be a mother, but to treat her amazing capacity for motherhood as something to be ashamed of or to minimize as something trivial causes serious confusion and problems. These attitudes and beliefs do a grave disservice to our understanding of the inherent dignity and beauty of women. Our hope and prayer for this year's theme, Life Empowers, Pro-Life is Pro-Woman, is that it will be a healing remedy for the wounded and deceptive messages about women coming from the pro-abortion industry and beyond. And so we hope that you'll join us as we continue in many different ways to celebrate this theme throughout the year. We begin, first, there's an op-ed that's been printed just in this hour about one of the early suffragists, Alice Paul. It's written by me and co-written by a woman who runs Stanton Health Center, and we'll be having these different op-eds placed throughout the year about the early suffragists and their understanding of the inherent dignity of women as well as the inherent dignity of the unborn. Now, I would like to debut our theme video.
I love being a woman. When I say I love being a woman, I mean I love all of me. I mean I love all that that means. My mind, my lips, my soul, my hips, my body, my fertility, inner, outer beauty, and all that makes me she. We women are strong, intuitive, compassionate, and valuable. Smart, caring, nurturing, capable, and powerful. We are lawyers, mothers, poets, politicians, and teachers. Doctors, daughters, wives, artists, sisters, we are leaders. Let us always keep in our remembrance the bravery of our founding feminists. They birthed the 19th Amendment. Friends, these were our real-life heroines. Thank Alice Paul, because it was she who fought with Susan B. Anthony. In 1920, they got the vote, but it was just the beginning. They called abortion, and I quote, the ultimate exploitation of women. They not only recognized the rights of our very smallest children, they knew abortion at its core also harms us as women. Now come 2020, the number of killed females unborn has reached 30 million. But it should be no surprise that abortion targets the marginalized, so I'm lucky I survived. Let's go back in time again and find another heroine, Jane Roe of Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court case that made abortion legal in all states. Jane Roe was the cover name. Roe's real name was Norma McCorvey. She said she firmly believes the entire abortion industry is based on a lie. She spent the rest of her life trying to undo the law that bears her name. This was Jane Roe of Roe v. Wade, the woman who fought for abortion in the first place. By the time she realized the lie, they closed the case. We will never have true equality until we realize that abortion as a solution is the greatest lie. When we as women suffer costs like childcare or poverty, it should never even be the slightest thought that we terminate a life to solve the problems of society. Instead of hurting mothers most vulnerable, why would we not stand up with them and affirm their right to be assisted with injustice when in a crisis pregnancy? Because the power we have now and the rights that were afforded us are because of great women rising up before us. They took single cries and turned them into a chorus, saying, we will not be silenced and you cannot ignore us. Ladies, let's fight like them to be a voice for the voiceless.
We are now going to hear from our esteemed panelists. I'm so excited to hear from each of them. So we're going to begin with Serrin Foster here. Serrin is the president of Feminists for Life and creator of the Women Deserve Better campaign. Her landmark speech, The Feminist Case Against Abortion, has been recognized as one of the great speeches in history in an anthology called Women's Rights. Feminists for Life originally researched and revealed the pro-life sentiments of our feminist foremothers, and she'll be speaking very much on that today. Serrin has led Feminists for Life since 1994. Under her leadership, Feminists for Life successfully advocated benefits for poor and pregnant women through the state child health insurance program, worked in coalition with other women's organizations to defeat the mandatory family cap and other punitive child exclusion provisions in welfare reform. Serrin served in the National Task Force Against Sexual Assault and Domestic Violence, which worked to pass the Violence Against Women Act. She's also testified before the U.S. House Judiciary Committee in support of the Unborn Victims of Violence Act. In January 1997, Serrin moderated the first ever Feminists for Life Pregnancy Resource Forum at Georgetown University, which became a model for the country, and in 2010 became the basis for Pregnancy Assistance Fund grants awarded by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Serrin's efforts earned her an honorary degree from Belmont Abbey College in 2008, and in 2019, Serrin was presented the first annual Legacy Award from Abby Johnson at the Pro-Life Women's Conference. Serrin serves as editor-in-chief of the American Feminist and Feminists for Life's online resource, womendeservebetter.com. Serrin Foster.
Thank you, Jeannie. I'm so grateful to you and everybody at March for Life who works so long throughout the year. And as I was telling Jeannie beforehand, we've been talking about this for 3 years. I've been waiting for the 2020. It is so important to us, so I'm so glad to be here with so many of you here today to understand how important this is to the pro-life movement and to women. So I want to say thank you for listening to me, even though I'm a feminist. Maybe you don't like that term. I also want to say to those of you who may have had an abortion or participated in an abortion that we're not here to condemn you. Feminists for Life is here because we want to free women from abortion. All feminists do not support abortion. You know that by the fact that I am here today. And properly defined, feminism is a philosophy that embraces the rights of all human beings without exception. And that means without regards to one's race, religion, their sex, their size, their location, their disability, or parentage. Feminists reject the use of force to dominate, to control, or destroy one another. And there were 2 women that are captured in a wonderful monument under the Rotunda in Washington, D.C., of Susan B. Anthony, and the other 2 women are Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott. And those 2 women traveled from New England with their husbands to participate in the first anti-slavery convention in London. It was in 1864. But the white women they took a vote and they said the white women couldn't participate in the convention. This was for guys only. So you can just imagine how irritated Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lott and the other women were. And so they decided to have a convention of their own so that women could speak on their own behalf. And for those others who did not have a voice. So she decided on a slow boat back to America that they would have a convention of women's rights, but it wouldn't happen for another 6 years. But what was it like for them? I want you to put yourself in their places. At that time, American women could not vote, could not hold property. They didn't sit on a jury, testify on their own behalf. And these were privileged white women. We're not talking about women who were African American, who were Native Americans. We're talking about women who would have been perceived as being privileged. But they didn't even go to college, except for a few at Oberlin. They did not maintain child custody oftentimes after death of a spouse or divorce. It was severely limited. And marital rape went unacknowledged. So you can see that it's much like women in developing countries today. That's what American women in that time and space were like. The early American feminists faced much of the same conditions, and like them, they were strongly opposed to abortion, despite their own struggles. They believed in the worth of all human beings. Susan B. Anthony signed a pledge for universal suffrage for everyone. And as feminists, we are sons and daughters of abolitionists. That's where the movement came from, because the same women who fought for the rights of slaves to be free and the rights of women to vote also fought for our children to be here and for mothers to be supported. Abortion was common in the 1800s, and many people are surprised by this. That's because it was a very commonly advertised, these false patent medicines. That was the #1 advertiser in women's magazines. Sarah Norton, who along with Susan B. Anthony successfully argued admission to women in 1870 at Cornell University. But she writes what it was like then, how often it happened then. And she writes, child murderers practice their profession without let or hindrance and open infant butcheries unquestioned. Is there no remedy for this antenatal murder? Perhaps there will come a day when an unmarried mother will not be despised because of her motherhood, and the right of the unborn to be born will not be denied or interfered with. And in 1868, a novelist turned activist named Eleanor Kirk linked the needs of women's rights to protect the need for the unborn. When a woman told her, she was much like the activists that I talk to all the time on college campuses, you know, passing out things, using social media, always advocating for something better for more people beyond what they have. And she's rejected by this woman who says, you know, she's going, votes for women, and this woman says, I don't need votes for women. My husband and I are one. She said, well, what happens to you if something happens to your husband? And so she writes down, she says, why doesn't somebody ask, what has happened to the babies? Not just the women, the babies. Ask Madame Brastel, who openly performed abortions in New England, causing a terrible death of one young woman. And thousands of physicians, male and female, who've engaged in their work of destruction for years. Physicians who have graduated from our first medical colleges, physicians with high-sounding diplomas, whose elegant equipages stand in front of Fifth Avenue mansions, and no one's the wiser. They pocket a big fee and a little bundle of flesh. And the husband, even the husband in the host of instances, doesn't know about this. What will become of the babies, did you ask? And you? Can you not see that the idea is to educate women that they may be self-reliant, self-sustaining, and self-respected? The wheel is a big one, and it needs a big push. And a push altogether, giving it a revolution that will keep it constantly revolving. And the first revolution must be female suffrage. God speed the time. For the sake of the babies, the little ones will then be welcome. Without known exception, the early American feminists condemned abortion in no uncertain terms. In the radical feminist newspaper owned by Susan B. Anthony, co-edited by Elizabeth Cady Stanton, they refused to publish thinly disguised abortifacients, and abortion was constantly referred to as, I quote, child murder. And it was the third most discussed topic in Susan B. Anthony's revolution. Stanton, who in 1848 organized a women's convention in Center Falls, New York, classified abortion. This is the mother of the women's movement. The founder of feminism, okay? And she classifies abortion as infanticide. And she says, she refers to either, she calls it the murder of children, literally, the murder of children either before or after birth. To her, there's no difference. She says, we believe in the cause of all these abuses is the degradation of women. The early American feminists did argue that women who had abortions were responsible for their actions, but they resorted to abortion primarily because of lack of resources and support from their family, from friends, their own lack of financial resources and emotional support. And doesn't that sound like today? But she writes in the magazine, or in the newspaper rather, there's a passage that explains who is responsible. States guilty, yes, no matter what the motive, a love of ease, or a desire to save from suffering the unborn innocent. The woman is awfully guilty who commits the deed. It will burden her conscience in life. It will burden her soul in death. But oh, thrice guilty is he who drove her to the desperation which impelled her to the crime. And Victoria Woodhull, the first woman to run for president of the United States, it was not Hillary Clinton. It was Victoria Woodhull. She wrote in her own newspaper, the rights of children, then as individuals, begin while yet they remain the fetus. And her sister Tennessee Claflin declared, pregnancy is not a disease, but a beautiful office of nature. And Elizabeth Cady Stanton shocked Victorian society by parading around in public, visibly pregnant, raising a flag to celebrate the birth of her son. Stanton celebrated womanhood. But like today's pro-life feminists, and Jeanne alluded to this, Our feminist foremothers also recognized that women do not need to share in the celebration of womanhood by bearing children of their own. And Susan B. Anthony is my favorite example of this, because she was the organizer who traveled the country. She was a Quaker teacher, but she never had children. Anthony was once complimented by a friend who said, "Ms. Anthony, you would have made a wonderful wife and mother." And she responded, "Sweeter even than to have had the joy of caring for children of my own has it been for me to help bring about a better state of things for mothers generally, so their unborn little ones could not be willed away from them." In her later years, Anthony knew that all of her friends had died before her, that her most cherished dream, she would never see it happen. And she knew that the next generation would need to assume leadership, and that woman was Alice Paul. Paul fought tirelessly for the passage of the 19th Amendment, which we enjoy today, and finally in 1920, finally guaranteed American women the right to vote. And just as Jeanne Mancini today leads a magnificent parade up and down the avenues in Washington, D.C., Alice Paul led magnificent parades from the Union Station to the White House in the name of votes for women. And these women suffered terribly. They suffered terribly. 100 of them were beaten in front of the White House. They were stripped in front of policemen. They were fed really god-awful food, unedible things. One was slammed into a cell while her friend watched. She was rendered unconscious. Her friend thought she had died, and that woman had a heart attack, dying. They were fed, force-fed. It was a nightmare. Women suffered for the right to vote. So when I hear women don't have the time to get out to vote, I just wish they knew what price people paid before them. So it's important for us to vote. So I would love to tell you about the second wave of feminism and how feminism what changed to go from pro-life to pro-choice, but I don't think we have time. But I do want to sit there and say that we have a failing report card after Roe v. Wade has been decided. And here it is, and it comes from Guttmacher, the former research arm of Planned Parenthood. 3 out of 4 women who have abortions are the poorest among us. Their children are no less precious. 6 out of 10 are pursuing their college education, but they never get it. They get everything but a degree and more debt because schools don't accommodate. 6 out of 10 are women of color, and 6 out of 10 are already mothers, including those who have had children in high school and during college. And I mean, it's just sickening. And you know that half of all abortions are repeat abortions, and that's because abortion solves nothing. Feminism, in its latest form, has diminished fatherhood, and millions of women live in poverty because of lack of child support. Abortions solve nothing. We've just lost millions and millions and millions of people. We always talk about those babies, and rightfully we should, but we also have to remember the women who died from abortion. Holly Patterson's died on my birthday, September 17th. Her father called the office. "I don't know if I'm pro-life or pro-choice. I just know my daughter's dead." Or what about Connemeyer Monger, who died at the hands of convicted murderer Kermit Gosnell? Or Cree Willing Irwin, whose little baby boy turned 1 year old the day his mother went back to Planned Parenthood at Kalamazoo and died on his first birthday. Because she didn't know that there were people like you who'd help her. She didn't know. She thought her parents were going to be disappointed in her again. So we have got to work in 3 ways for Feminists for Life. It's on college campuses, in the workplace, and with fathers to bring dads back into the picture. These are the way we want to end the feminization of poverty that drives women to abortion. Because women deserve abortion. Women deserve better than abortion. And after 10 years of our college outreach program, there was a 30% drop in the percentage of abortions by college-educated women. Abortion betrays the basic feminist principles of nonviolence, non-discrimination, and justice for all. Abortion is a reflection that we have not met the needs of women and that women have settled for less. Women deserve better. There's a woman named Maddie Brinkerhoff whose quote I'd like to use to conclude my comments. She wrote it in 1869 in the Revolution. When a man steals to satisfy hunger, we can safely assume that there is something wrong in society. So when a woman destroys the life of her unborn child, it is an evidence that either by education or circumstances, she has been greatly wronged. Feminism was born of abolition. All people are equal. All choices are not. And we envision a better day on the eve of the 2020 when mothers are supported, when womanhood is celebrated, when fathers are honored, and when every child is cherished. March 4th.
Thank you, Serrin. That was very powerful. Lots of very interesting. Early war. Okay. Thank you very much, Serrin Foster. So next we'll be hearing from Victoria Cobb. Victoria, of course, is president of the Family Foundation of Virginia. She traveled up from Richmond this morning. The Family Foundation is the largest and oldest pro-family organization in Virginia, where Victoria maintains the vision and mission of the organization while managing all areas of operation and serving as the organization's spokesperson. As such, she's often quoted in media such as the Associated Press, Washington Post, CNN, Richmond Times-Dispatch, Virginia Pilot, the Washington Times, the Roanoke Times, etc. Victoria serves on the John Jay Institute Board of Directors. She has served on many other commissions as well, on the Commission on Youth Work Group on Strengthening the Family, Governor Jim Gilmore's former honorary chairman, Business Advisory Council of the National Republican Congressional Committee. She was named one of Richmond's top 40 under 40. Style Weekly recipient, Alumni of the Year, University of Richmond in 2010, and many other awards. Victoria earned her BA in Political Science and Leadership Studies at University of Richmond, and she and her husband Matt and their 4 children reside in Richmond. Victoria.
It's a real pleasure to be here to partner with the March for Life. They have been just a phenomenal partner to us in Virginia. And yes, I am from Virginia, the now known Commonwealth for our governor's great comfort in describing infanticide. That is what we've been up against in Virginia. And in Virginia, we've worked hard, just like everyone has around the nation, to reduce the rate of abortion. We've passed laws, tons of pro-life laws over the past 2 decades. We've exposed a lot of horrific inspection reports that show exactly what's going on in the abortion facility. We have welcomed 40 Days for Life and so many others that have been praying outside of these facilities. And we're even excited to have had our very first state march, partnering with the National March this past spring. And with all this work and all this prayer, it has not been lost. Just last month, the National Public Radio actually announced that the abortion rate has dropped in Virginia since 2011, 41.5%. These things make a difference that everyone is doing. And the decrease in abortion isn't just about saving unborn lives, although maybe that's what we think about principally. It is, in fact, about saving women. That's why I'm excited to be here standing with this year's theme about life empowering women. And here just in time to try to reverse all the gains that we've made in saving the unborn and saving women who have now foregone the emotional and spiritual trauma of being associated with having had an abortion, who are now instead living full, thriving lives despite an unplanned pregnancy. Now, to turn all of that back is the reemergence of the Equal Rights Amendment. Now, I will just tell you that what that's all about is the same thing it's always been about. Proponents are operating the same way they've always operated, and that is pure deception. For years, abortion sympathizers have framed the entire issue, the right for women to take the lives of their unborn children, as pro-woman. Have we ever stopped to really think about what this claim is? Just to lay out the claim. When a woman gets pregnant, the people who are saying she must take the life of her child in order for her to continue school or have a thriving career are the people who are supposed to be on the side of being pro-woman. And in fact, this same messaging would have people believe that those of us who are telling that same woman that in fact we want to wrap support services around her and we want to love her and her baby and we want to help her get back on her feet again, we're not pro-woman. The same false narrative, the same deception says that when a woman goes into an abortion center to make a decision that you or I would hope she would never make, but nevertheless she's going to make that decision, it's the pro-woman progressives that supposedly have her best interest in mind, and yet they've fought in the legislature, the courts, the regulatory boards to make sure that there is no life-saving equipment there should she not only take the life of her unborn, but should her life also be at risk. That's the pro-woman side of this issue. Furthermore, our society is supposed to believe that those who agree with sex selection abortion are empowering women, that it's American and morally required to fight discrimination in every corner of our society except in the womb. In fact, those of us who would suggest sex selection abortion is wrong and say men coercing women to have an abortion are wrong, or to dare propose the idea that women are fully capable of being moms and whatever else they want to be, apparently we're not about empowering women. It baffles my mind. And recently, I've been even more baffled by the progressive notion of being, quote, pro-woman. Apparently, they want to claim that it's empowering for women to bring back the outdated, ill-conceived, ill-advised ERA, Equal Rights Amendment, and they're trying to convince us that that empowers women. Yes, this is the very same Equal Rights Amendment that gave Phyllis Schlafly her claim to fame back in the 1970s, and that you're hearing about in modern political context. It's the one first introduced in 1923 that has had many fits and starts over its history, but has also had a very real death and burial. It's the exact ERA that either you fought decades ago, or your mama fought decades ago, or your grandma fought decades ago. It's that old, it's that outdated, and it's past its prime. Or at least it better be. But progressive candidates and political parties, they know a mobilizing tool when they see one. Even though reasonable legal scholars tell us that the time to ratify the ERA is far in the past, a point at which even progressive icon Ruth Bader Ginsburg agrees, Virginia could become the 38th state to ratify the amendment if next month's elections are won by pro-ERA, pro-abortion candidates. But the deception of the ERA has gone on for 40 years. Phyllis saw it for what it was, the inclusion of abortion up until the point of birth with taxpayer dollars in the U.S. Constitution. She fought it and stopped it by explaining the truth about the ERA to pro-life Americans. In order to understand how the ERA is interpreted, you have to reverse and back up your entire modern understanding of equality and erase all the gains that we have made as women in our society. Put yourself back into the 1970s mentality. You see, there was a time when, in order to have equality with men, women needed to appear to be the same as men. That equal had to be sameness. If you wanted the same paycheck for the same job, you must look the part and pretend you weren't also a mother. Without a world of maternity leave and telecommuting, those things, have generally leveled the playing field. But without those things, those who see no moral problem with the taking of human life see abortion as the great equalizer. It is the way women who have one critical distinction between us and men erase that distinction. In this mindset, motherhood, in all its beauty, becomes a barrier to being identical to men. Now return your mind back into the 21st century, where somehow courts are still outdated enough to be applying that language of being identical to the ERA that has now been put in state constitutions. And now we're seeing where in states that have taken the Equal Rights Amendment, added it to their constitution, the courts are saying, yes, in fact, in order to have this notion of equality and dignity and respect, we have to interpret it to say that there has to be taxpayer funding for abortion in our state. This has happened in Connecticut, New Mexico, and it's in litigation right now in Pennsylvania. The pro-abortion crowd sees the ERA as a path to ensure that regardless of what happens to Roe, abortion never ends. You see, Roe never had real footing in the Constitution. But if the ERA goes into the Constitution, abortion no longer needs to be justified by the penumbra formed in the unspecified emanations of the Bill of Rights, right? All of a sudden, it has a home in the US Constitution. We have no excuses. We know the deception. We know that abortion is built on lies, that unborn children aren't human beings, that abortion solves problems, that women are better off without children, that women are empowered by being able to kill their unborn child. And we know the deception of the ERA. But we're in the midst of a whole new generation who don't know the faces of the past, the facts of the past, the story, the meaning behind the ERA. Haven't been told about the states that have revoked the ratification to the ERA. It's our job to turn the tide of this. Proponents marched out a poll in Virginia, all while we were having our debate about the Equal Rights Amendment, saying 82% agree with the ERA. But the poll was simply, do you believe men and women should be treated equally, should be respected? I'm kind of stunned it wasn't 100%, to be honest with you. But here's the thing, we ran a Mason-Dixon poll. We quickly found out that if you simply let them know about the one consequence, and there are a lot of consequences behind the Equal Rights Amendment. Just let them know about the one consequence of the abortion implication. That overwhelming support moves to majority disapproval. One consequence, abortion. It's our job to help our friends and neighbors know that the ERA erases the beautiful balance our nation has been working for decades. Equal respect, dignity, and rights for women, while celebrating and accommodating the wonderful things that make us unique from men, like motherhood. And it's our job to make sure that they know that if the ERA does anything, it enshrines the killing of unborn children in a document that is built on the principle that government secures rights, including the rights of the unborn. In closing, empowering women is not about deception. It's not about a false choice of abortion or life success. Empowering women is not about being the same as men. Empowering women is about noting our uniqueness and embracing the things that make us different from men, like pregnancy. Empowering women is about saving women from the loss they feel when they take the life of their unborn child. Empowering women is about compassionately telling them the truth about abortion and about the Equal Rights Amendment's endgame of normalizing and legalizing abortion forever in our nation. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Victoria, and for all of your work in Virginia. Okay, and now I'm happy to introduce you to Gloria Purvis. Gloria is a graduate of Cornell University and worked for nearly 2 decades in the mortgage industry before becoming a risk management director at a major financial services company. She served on the National Black Catholic Congress's Leadership Commission on Social Justice and as an advisory board member on the Maryland Catholic Conference's Respect for Life Department, as well as the Archdiocese of Washington's Pastoral Council. She also taught natural family planning and helped prepare engaged couples for marriage as a member of a pre-Cana team in the Archdiocese of Washington. She has appeared in various media outlets, including the Washington Post, PBS NewsHour, Catholic Answers Live, and EWTN News Nightly. Currently, Gloria is a full-time stay-at-home mom, except in the morning. Many of you heard her on the radio in the morning. She's a board member for the Northwest Pregnancy Center and Maternity Home in Washington, D.C. She serves on the Catholic Advisory Board for Ave Maria Mutual Funds and serves as a lay consultant to the U.S. Bishops' Committee on Religious Liberty. She is the creator and host of the EWTN TV series Authentically Free at Last, that deals with modern challenges to the expression and understanding of authentic human freedom. She also hosts the morning radio program Morning Glory on EWTN Global Catholic Radio. She's dedicated to promoting the sanctity of human life, marriage, and the dignity of the human person. She's also mom to 1 beautiful little girl and husband to an amazing husband. So.
Thank you, Jeanne. I'm actually so excited to be here, and I'm like just to be able to talk about being pro-life. And I love the theme, life empowers. Pro-life is pro-woman. But let's look at the culture, and we need to really challenge some of the unsaid premises about what it means to be pro-life. Well, number one, being pro-life, I want you to know women can just be. You know, there's no alteration, no medicines, we're just all natural. And I'm like, whew, thank you. You know, everything else is like, we gotta nip, we gotta tuck, we gotta pull, we gotta, to be pro-life, none of that, just be a woman. That's it. We're not asking you to do anything harmful to yourself. And I'm like, that to me is empowering, to know that to be pro-life means a woman, just be who you are. Now, the other thing that I was thinking about is how a lot of arguments for abortion are premised on the flawed notion that our natural fertile bodies are our enemy. I mean, that's ridiculous. If you hear things like, terms like forced birth, and I'm like, wow, is somebody holding me down to make me give birth? I mean, this is how our natural bodies work. But somehow this abortion mindset posits to the woman that her body is her worst enemy, and it must be subdued at all costs, including even taking the life of your unborn child that is a result of a healthy working reproductive system. Yet somehow we're told that's oppressive, that we are forced. And I'm like, well, I'm not forced to breathe air. You know, it's just a natural function of our bodies. But this isn't what the pro-abortion side has us think about ourselves. And I thought, thank God I'm pro-life. I don't have this hang-up about my body being capable of bearing children. I also think that the other problem with these thoughts of a woman's body being her worst enemy has led to not only things like having legalized abortion, but saying that legalized abortion is necessary, as Victoria said, for equality with men. That means equality in the workplace, whether you are a laborer, a doctor, a lawyer, a businessman. In order to be equal to men in the workplace, you need this abortion because remember, your body is your worst enemy. And I thought, you know what a deflection from requiring businesses to actually grapple with the actual inclusion of women in the workplace. Instead of considering that, yes, women are capable of bearing children and we need to not just accommodate them, but help them to thrive and flourish in the workplace by perhaps revisiting how we even structure work. But instead of the American culture grappling with that, they throw out abortion as the solution. How is that empowering? How does that really bring us to the table? How does that not posit to us or propose to us that we have to make the greatest sacrifice just to be at the table? That is not pro-woman. That is the opposite of being pro-woman. I feel like, how did we fall for the okie doke? I mean, how did this get through? Did no one say, this is ridiculous? You're asking the greatest sacrifice of women just for us to be able to work. And I think about how everyone's talking now about pregnancy discrimination laws, right? Which, you know, you can't make a hiring decision solely on the fact that a woman is pregnant. And I thought, but abortion, legalizing abortion, tears that right on down. It's like you're building up with one hand and tearing down the support ground with the other. Because as long as abortion is legal, you better believe that employers are going to have the attitude that you better not be pregnant. Not if you expect to succeed here. And I think about the great fear that puts on women. Oh, when am I going to announce that I'm pregnant? How are they going to take that? Am I going to have a job when I come back? Oh, am I going to be put on the dreaded mommy track? See, we have the laws in place, but we haven't dealt with the attitudes. And we never will deal with the attitudes as long as people are running around and saying abortion is a woman's right. A woman's right to do what? Be more like a man, because a male body cannot get pregnant. And yet we don't challenge those things. We've fallen for the okie doke. You know what? I support a woman's right to be born. Those are the rights we should be supporting. This nonsense about a woman's right to choose. Choose what? Choose to destroy something that is uniquely female. And that's the price of admission. That's the price to the boardroom. That's the price to the C-suite. And we readily champion that. No. We need to challenge that thinking. because it's flawed, and frankly, in my opinion, it's quite anti-woman. Now, the other thing about being pro-life, as I said, is again, it challenges the notion that maleness is the model of perfection for all of humanity. And I don't think our economy, our culture, our businesses have really grappled with what it is to be fully inclusive of a woman, an unmedicated woman that does not have abortion as a backstop. Imagine what would happen in the workplace. Yes, we have teleworking now. Yes, we have maternity leave, but imagine what other innovations there could be if we actually approach work with the idea that a woman, a pregnant woman, a working mother may not have the same schedule as a man that doesn't have those same requirements upon himself. Imagine what kind of innovations we could have can have. But again, I think it requires an attitude change. I remember speaking with a man about pregnancy discrimination, and he said, well, you know, with women, it's just the economic reality that you guys just aren't going to be present in the workplace, and we need to address those economic realities. And I thought, how is it that men can take leave for any other thing, you know? Stress leave, they can take a leave if they break a leg, you can take a leave of whatever, but somehow because we need leave, because we actually have something physical happen to our bodies, that we somehow are a detriment to a successful workplace. I thought, what a flawed idea. But again, why would he think any differently when we've championed that women need these things in order to be able to compete? So they don't have to grapple again with what it means to fully include women, as we are, unmedicated and without abortion. And I think that's a big failure for American society. If we're going to talk about equality and freedom, we can't really do so when the picture of women's equality requires a hobbled woman. Now, African American women, I am one, and I have to say I'm furious, frankly, with how the pro-abortion movement has, in my opinion, pimped the image of the African American woman. They've put us forward as, you know, abortion empowers black women. They need abortion to achieve, to compete, when it's really just a mask for the unjust discrimination at the heart of the abortion movement. You see, because abortion is premised on the notion that the child in the womb is really just not human. And what better person to put up there to mask this unjust discrimination than the African American woman? What woman better to put up there to make your arguments for, you know, why we need abortion for the poor than the poor African American woman? And all it does is deflect from real solutions to poverty, because I can tell you, killing the poor is not a solution for poverty. And that's what the abortion movement posits. The pro-life movement does not. I also think of our early suffragists and feminists. I think of the African American women, Henrietta Purvis, Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, Harriet Fortin Purvis. All of these women, African American women, collaborated with abolitionists and white suffragists. And they also collaborated with men to get the vote, because they believed that black men, along with women, should get the vote. It was no separation. So I wonder how they would see the current pro-abortion movement and their attitudes toward the poor black women, and especially their attitude toward men, that men should have no voice, that they should be out, that they have, because they cannot bear a child, they therefore have no say. Yet these women worked and collaborated to secure their rights along with the rights of men, black men. It was not me before you, it's all of us together, and we can all then reach a place of equality. So I wonder how these suffragette sisters of ours would look at the current abortion rights movement, and how it has failed black women, how it has abused black women, and how it has mistreated black women, because it is not empowering or freeing for us to have to kill our children in the name of equality and freedom. I often say it's a big lie with abortion, because freedom built on the crushed skulls of our children is not freedom, that's oppression. And we are monsters, and that's our way of climbing to the top. I said, let's go up holding hands together instead of stomping on those weaker than us and those most vulnerable. Pro-life movement doesn't require that of us. It asks us to all go together. It asks us to care for those women among us who are most needy. The pro-abortion movement really doesn't. Their answer for the poor woman isn't, how can we help you? It's give her abortion, let her make that choice, all the while making no personal commitment to help their struggling neighbor. The pro-life movement empowers us to reach across to those who are struggling and to help them. They would like to have you believe that the pro-life movement is all about controlling women's sexuality and having a say about what women are doing, but in a negative way. What the pro-life movement does is it invites us to look out to our neighbor and say, who is in need and how can I help them? Rather than saying, you know what, it's your choice, baby, I don't have nothing to do with that. That's yours, that's on you. All the while not providing anything, no assistance. And how much of a choice is that really? I heard Serrin once talk about that on college campuses, how can you have nothing set up for pregnant female students, and expect them to do anything but choose abortion? So that's the big lie, you see. Pro-abortion is not helping women. Pro-abortion is not loving women. Pro-abortion is not saying that women are wonderful. It's quite the opposite. And I want to say to any African American women listening, you know what? Don't fall for the nonsense of the NARALs and the Planned Parenthood, even though they're very much targeting our community. Organizations like the March for Life need you. We need our voices out in the community to talk about the truth and the beauty of being a woman, the truth and the beauty of motherhood, of pregnancy, and also, more importantly, to be there to help, because we know people do struggle. Lastly, let me say, being pro-life doesn't predicate your right to life on anything. It's not predicated on your wealth, your health, or whether or not you're even wanted. Being pro-life says all are welcome, all are loved, all are worthy. And that's an empowering message. And that's one I can get behind. And it's one that I hope that we will champion as we go forward with their theme that life empowers and pro-life is pro-woman. We need to start speaking the truth and speaking it boldly and not be afraid to say, yes, I am pro-life and I support a woman's right to be born. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gloria. I'm just as we're listening to these wonderful remarks by these three incredible ladies, I'm just considering the fact that we don't really have shrinking violets up here at all. I think that this panel embodies beautifully life empowers, pro-life is pro-woman, and they're each living it out in such a unique way. And so thank you to each of you in living this out on your own. And so I pulled a quote. There were so many great quotes today and so much passion, and I pulled one just from each of you just to, I'm sure each of us heard different things that struck us. Serrin, something that really struck me is that there is no known suffragist that was pro-abortion, okay? That is a very important fact to remember. There is no known suffragist that was pro-abortion. Victoria, that abortion is seen as the great equalizer and motherhood becomes then a barrier. Gloria, pro-abortion movement has pimped African American women, and that being pro-life means that all are welcome here. And we each, I think, in different ways touched upon this this erroneous perspective of humanity that men and women are that are the same. You know, we're equal in dignity but different, and that's a beautiful thing. And just a little carrot, a little nugget for those of you who are here. At the March for Life itself, we only have 2 minutes for the speakers to speak, so we can't really delve into the theme in any kind of depth at the actual rally itself. But where we are able to do that a little bit more is the conference the day before. And this year, our keynote speaker for the conference is Erica Bakioki, who, if anybody can knock it out of the park in terms of understanding that sameness is not such a good thing, but equal in dignity but different, I mean, she really does, and she lived it. I mean, she lived it herself, and so she'll share her story and also just the philosophical underpinnings of what the inherent dignity and vocation of women means, as well as how that's a complement to men. So we're excited to have Erica. I'm guessing that, I know that there are many members of the media here, and we've gone on for about an hour now, so that's where we plan to finish, but All of us will be around afterwards to take questions, either members of the media or other people who are here who might have some questions. But on behalf of our March for Life staff, I'd like to thank each of you for being here with us, and I would like to ask you to join in with us as we continue to celebrate this theme throughout the entire year. The actual anniversary of the 19th Amendment is in August of 2020, so you can bet we will be celebrating this theme throughout the entire year. So thank you so much for being here. I see that there's a little food left. Please go get a little bit more before you go, and thank you again.